In book 8 of the Poem of the Man God, or the Gospel as Revealed to Me, this is the current edition, there's an extremely important chapter, which is the resurrection of Lazarus, which we read about in the Gospel of John. People are wondering, why isn't the resurrection of Lazarus mentioned in the other Gospels? Well, I suppose that needs to be put in the context of when those Gospels were written. And, a thesis is maybe the other Gospels didn't want to expose Lazarus too much. And when John is writing his Gospel, Lazarus may have been dead, because Lazarus would have been older than the Apostle John, who was very young. And surely John would have died after Lazarus died. However, one thing that is fascinating about the Poem of the Man God, about this work of Maria Valtorta, is the tempo. You start reading the poem, and the beat picks up. Things get very dramatic as Christ's mission, which lasted over 14 months, goes towards its completion. Christ comes to say he is the Messiah, the Son of God, and he gives signs. People think that the scribes and the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the elite, the Jewish elite of the time, didn't have enough signs for them to see to believe in Christ. Christ really gave in to everything they asked for. And in the Poem of the Man God, in the resurrection of Lazarus, Christ performed something to give them an exact sign, exactly what they asked for. I'm just going to read you something here, and it's from that chapter. It's from 548 in the new edition. So you can get these on the Pisani website, which is the current publisher of these. You can get these books. I do recommend you buy the English translation. I have both. I have the Italian original, and I use an English translation as well. But one thing is just fascinating me about this chapter. I'm just going to read you through it. Joseph of Arimathea makes a gesture as if he were frightened and beckons to Zealot to restrain Jesus, but he is already going towards the rancorous group and is already saying aloud, "Sadok, is what you have seen enough for you? One day you told me that in order to believe, you and your peers needed to see a decomposed, dead body be recomposed and in good health. Are you satisfied with the rottenness you have seen? Can you admit that Lazarus was dead and that now he is alive and healthy, as he has never been for many years? I know you came here to tempt these people, to increase their grief and their doubt. You came here looking for me, hoping to find me hiding in the room of a dying man. You did not come with feelings of love, with the desire to honour the deceased man, but to ensure that Lazarus was really dead. And you have continued to come rejoicing all the more as time went by. If the situation had evolved as you were hoping, as you believed it would evolve, you would have been right in exulting. The friend who cures everybody, who does not cure his friend. The master who rewards everybody's faith, but not the faith of his friends in Bethany. The Messiah, powerless against the reality of death. That is what was making you exalt. Then God gave his reply. No prophet has been able to put together what was decomposed. In addition to being dead, God did it. That is the living witness of what I am. One day it was God who took some dust and made it into the form, and he breathed the vital life into it, and man was. I was there to say, let man be made in his own image and likeness. Because I am the word of the Father, today I The Word said to what is even less than dust, I said to rottenness, live. And decomposition was recomposed into flesh, into wholesome living breathing flesh. Then it is looking at you. There it is looking at you. And to the flesh I joined the spirit that had been lying for days in Abraham's bosom. I called him with my will, because I can do everything, as I am the living being. I am the King of Kings, to whom all creatures and things are subject. What are you going to reply to me now? He is in front of them, tall, ablaze with majesty, really judge and king. They do not reply. He insists, is it not enough for you to believe, to accept what is elucidable? You have kept the one part of your promise. This is not the sign of Jonah, says Sadok harshly. This is paint yourself in this scene. Paint yourself, they saw Lazarus dying. They saw him being buried. They were there for days after mourning, and still they would not believe. And then they throw back at them, you have not kept one part of your promise. This is not the sign of Jonah, says Sadok harshly. You shall have that one as well. I promised it, and I will keep my promise, says the Lord. And another person who is present here is waiting for another sign shall have it. And as he is a just man, he will accept it. You will not. You will remain what you are. Then he turns around and sees Simon, the member of the Sanhedrin and son of Eliana. He gazes at him. He leaves the previous group, and when he is face to face with him, he says in a low but incisive voice, you are fortunate that Lazarus does not remember his stay among the dead. What have you done with your father, O Cain? Simon runs away with a cry of fear that he changes into a howl of malediction. May you be cursed, Nazarene. To which Jesus replies, your curse is rising to heaven, and from heaven the Most High throws it back at you. You are marked with the sign, you wretch. He goes back to the groups that are astonished, almost frightened. He meets Gamaliel, who is going towards the row. He looks at Gamaliel, who looks at him. Jesus says to him without stopping, be ready, Rabbi. The sign will soon come. I never lie. The garden slowly becomes empty. The Judeans are dumbfounded, but most of them are bursting with wrath. If glances could reduce one to ashes, Jesus would have been pulverized a long time ago. They speak and discuss among themselves while going away, and they are so upset by their defeat that they are unable to conceal the purpose of their presence here under the hypocritical appearance of friendship. They go away without saying goodbye to Lazarus or the sisters. Some remain behind and have been conquered to the Lord by the miracle. Among them there is Joseph Barnabas, who throws himself at his knees before Jesus, worshipping. Another one is Joel of Abijah, the scribe, who does the same thing before departing. And there are others as well whom I do not know, but they must be influential people. In the meantime, Lazarus, surrounded by his most intimates, has withdrawn into the house. Joseph, Nicodemus, and other good people greet Jesus and go away. The Judeans who were standing with Martha and Mary depart, giving low bows. The servants close the gate. The house becomes peaceful again. Jesus looks about himself. This is an important note. Just listen to this. Jesus looks about himself. He sees smoke and flames at the end of the garden, towards the sepulchre. All alone, standing in the middle of a path, Jesus says, rottenness is being destroyed by fire, the rottenness of death. But no fire will ever destroy the corruption of hearts, of those hearts, not even the fire of hell. It will last forever. How horrible, worse than death, worse than putrefaction. But who will save you, O mankind, if you love so much to be corrupt? You want to be corrupt, and I have torn a man from the sepulchre with one word. And with a multitude of words, with a multitude of sorrows, I shall not be able to tear away from sin men, nations of men. He sits down with his hands, covers his face dejectedly. A servant who is passing by sees him. He goes into the house. Shortly afterwards, Mary comes out. She goes towards Jesus, walking so lightly that she does not seem to be touching the ground. She approaches him and says in a low voice, Rabboni, you are tired. Come, my Lord. Your tired apostles have gone into the house except Simon Zealot. Are you weeping, Master? Why? She kneels at Jesus' feet. She watches him. Jesus looks at her. He does not reply. He stands up and directs his steps towards the house, followed by Mary. That's just a part of that chapter. The scene there of Jesus looking at the fire at where Lazarus' sepulchre was, looking at the fire that's burning the bandages that would have covered Lazarus. Because, you know, if you think about that scene in the Gospel of John, that resurrection of Lazarus, it really is pivotal. You know, it wasn't just Lazarus who Christ raised from the dead. You know, he raises the little girl. And even at that, people didn't believe. People didn't believe the signs they saw. Those who, you know, are hardened of hearts, hardened of minds, would not believe. And Christ keeps showing them. And he had to show them Lazarus' resurrection. He had to show them a putrefied, decomposed body raised from the dead. You know, in that chapter, we realize that Lazarus died of gangrene or some problem with his leg. Because when they're unwrapping him, the sisters are amazed to see him completely healed. It picks up the tempo, the whole tempo of the gospel, you know, up to Lazarus' resurrection. You know, if we look at the gospels, this is towards the third year. This is towards the end of Jesus' ministry. He gives as much as he can give. He shows as much as he can show. He gives as many signs as... All of those that were hardened of heart got their sign that they wanted. You know? And the resurrection of Lazarus is key. It's not like the little girl or somebody that is a nobody. Lazarus was known. Everybody understood who Lazarus was. And so when he died, it was known. When he was risen from the dead, it was known. And even at that, they could not accept that Christ was who he was. And we see him put to death. And we see the sign of Jonah afterwards with his resurrection. But I just wanted to whet your appetite for this. I've been blogging about this for a long time. I'm going to move on now to Father Ernesto Zucchini's book. So Father Ernesto is publishing 3 books. The first one is in English. It's called Heaven in a Room. The next one is just in Italian. And then he has a third book coming out. Now, he has said to me, Robert, use my material. Make Maria Valtorta known to the world. You know, and I thought that was very, very nice of him. You know, he said, use my books. And so I'm going to weave in some of his work, his monumental work on Maria Valtorta, because it's very important that people know about this mystic, that people start to study her work, study her mission, and try to understand who she is and why Christ is using her at this moment in the history of the church. You know, as we've seen, you know, 350 years ago we had the Sacred Heart, and every era of the church we see God strengthening her. But in Father Ernesto's book, Heaven in a Room, on page 205, he has this interesting chapter, which I think I will read out because I do think this deserves more debate. We need to understand Maria Valtorta more. So what is typical about Maria Valtorta? Question mark. To understand the peculiarity of Maria Valtorta's mission, let us compare it with another immolated victim soul, Martha Robin. This is how Jeanne Guiton summarily described her life. Born in 1902 in a French village between Rhine and the Alps, Martha Robin died in 1981 at the age of 79 in her father's home, which she never left. For 50 years, with this simple and humble woman never ate nor drank, and every Friday she suffered the agony of the passion and carried the stigmata. Blind, photophobic, and completely paralysed, she founded through her assistance over 50 prayer centres, the charity homes scattered all over the world. This very briefly in her story, but what needs to be underlining here is the reply to Jeanne Guiton in a book which is fundamental to understanding her in depth. He asked her, I tried to talk to her about the phenomena linked to mysticism, visions, ecstasies, levitations, mind reading, etc. I tried to insist on the phenomena of the gold ring, which a mystic believes they can see a gold ring on their ring finger. In her response, yes, I know of these things. They are superficial. We must get over them without making too much fuss. You mentioned the gold ring. I saw it on my finger, I think a dozen times. But let me tell you that as much as it is good to have it, it is even better not to have it. What you call a mystical life can be within you as is within me. It consists in trying to be one with Jesus. This clarification is important. To be one with Jesus. She did not say only to imitate Jesus. She went well beyond it. To be one with Jesus. It was certainly the fundamental desire of Francis of Assisi. It is like saying to be Jesus. It is the very distinction between Luisa Picaretta made between thy will be done and the divine will. Interesting. I didn't know that. Which she spread. She also put herself on another level, not to be the will of the Father, but to be the will of the Father. Undoubtedly, Martha seems to have gone deep down in her union with God, where everything else simply disappeared. As late as 1956, Maria Valtorta did not seem to have overcome certain obstacles. So the impression is that Martha Robin achieved radically and a totality unknown to Maria Valtorta. Perhaps, but after that date, Maria was so totally absorbed in God that she was constantly absent from this world. It is impossible to compile a leaderboard of such spiritual heights. Who of the two has gone higher or deeper inside the divine alcove of the seventh mansion of St. Teresa of Avila, as Teresa of Avila would say? It is a pointless question. It is in the mystery of God, and it must be respected as such. Also with Monsignor Carnici, can we only kneel in amazed adoration of the glory of God, who manifests himself in these creatures so perfectly corresponding to him? One can say that they are both immolations, albeit in different vocations, perhaps because a single person would not be able to express both things. Martha had to express the union with God, so absolute and deep in her, like the apex of the soul of God. and conceivable only in heaven. But at the same time, she had to show the charity homes founded by her and with her spiritual director, Father George Finette, a place of love for life among men in imitation through the Trinitarian life, and of one that she was already living with God. Maria Valtorta, on the other hand, had to act as a medium to take men who are willing to Jesus in the fullness of his life on earth, and therefore to the fullness of faith in him, to make them fall enthusiastically in love with him by means of her descriptions, accompanying them day by day, page by page, step by step, beside Jesus, along the path of this world, showing everyone back in those days, but with cultural characteristics of our own time, his life, his hardships, misunderstandings, humiliations. Once in love, he will lead them into imitation without boundaries until he will enter with them into a deep mystery of the God Trinity. Martha suggested this destination. Maria indicated the path and the steps to get there. This seems to be the difference in their vocation. Certainly it would have been easy for Maria Valtorta to compare what she was writing with what she sometimes saw, but in doing so she would have run the same risk as Thomas Aquinas, and she would have stopped writing altogether. Let's get me the next page. Oh no, that's altogether. That's 30. That's the full chapter. And I thought that was fascinating. You know, how do you lead a soul to union with God? How do you, capture them onto that fascinating path that Christ is leading us? How do you disciple them? And I think it's fascinating how Don Ernesto makes that comparison in his book, and I do recommend you to read his book. Anyway, sorry this went on for too long, but I'm trying to knit together as much as I can on trying to make people understand the gift which is the work of Maria Valtorta for the Church. There's never been a time in humanity that we need this work so desperately as now, and you will be drawn into the gospel like never before. It is incredible what Maria Valtorta is describing, and it also kind of shows, Christ was patient. Christ loved those who disagreed with him, but he also asks us to love. That's the work of Maria Valtorta, a lesson on how to love Christ. And I encourage people to read it. Anyway, God bless you. Take care. Bye-bye.